Now it's time for Culture Talk, where we discuss culturally relevant topics that you can use to start conversations about your faith. And I'm joined today with biochemist Fazale Rana. Thank you, Fuzz, for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Sandra.
I'm really excited to talk to you about this topic. I stumbled upon an article, probably when I was supposed to be editing, but I found an article and it says religion is about emotion regulation and it's very good at it. And I was fascinated by it because it kind of unpacks all of these points from a naturalistic perspective that religion is good because it regulates our emotion, but it really doesn't have any other thing to stand on besides that. So we're going to go kind of through these points one by one, and then get your perspective on them. So one point that they bring up is that religion is, again, just about regulating our emotions. And the argument is that it steers us toward charity, compassion, cooperation through the system of carrots and sticks. So really, we're like children being motivated to behave um, through religion and for our reward. So how would you respond to that from a Christian perspective?
Yeah, before I kind of take on that point, I think it's really important to maybe look at a big picture perspective on the piece, uh, because you mentioned that this writer, Stephen Asma, is writing from a naturalistic perspective where he's viewing religion as the product of an evolutionary history, and he's arguing that it has adaptive value, like regulating our emotions, as an example. But he's ultimately making the point that actually religion is good. And this is significant because with the rise of the new atheism, the argument has been that not only is religion false, but it's not good, it's dangerous, it does damage to our world. So here is somebody who holds to a naturalistic perspective who's saying that religion may not be true, but it's actually good. And so to me, that in and of itself is really a significant point that he's making in response to the new atheism. And so I would agree with his first point that religion, in a broad sense, can actually help to make people more socially cohesive, can help make people more compassionate, charitable, forgiving. Uh, these are good things that the teachings of religion can help people with. But as somebody who's an evangelical Christian, I believe that my faith actually does make me a better person, but it's not simply because of what Christianity teaches. It's because I believe that Christianity is true, and that through my faith I interact with God and the Holy Spirit, which actually changes me in such a way that the fruit of my life is transformative, so that a byproduct of being changed through the interaction of the Holy Spirit is that I become a better person. And as part of that, my emotions become regulated in a way that makes me a good person to have in society. So to me, I think there's a fundamental difference there. It's not just simply the teachings, but it's also the fact that if your faith is indeed true, there should be an experience of God that actually is responsible more than the teaching for the transformation.
Yeah, you're talking about like the response that we would expect to have if our God is true. And one of the things that they bring up in this article is kind of to that point that religion is just false consolation. That the religious actions are accompanied by magical thinking or supernatural beliefs. Um, and it really is just nothing more than false consolation. And for some, that's dangerous. For, I think, the author of this article, it's okay in the sense that it does console us, similar to how music consoles us, but its um, ability to explain the supernatural isn't there. Music doesn't provide that in the same way that our faith would. So how would you respond to kind of that response that it is just false consolation?
Yeah, I would actually argue that the idea of the supernatural being equated to magical thinking is really a false relationship, because uh, you could believe that the supernatural does indeed exist, that there's more to the universe than the material aspects of the world around us. And that is a properly basic belief. That's not something that's irrational to think. And that you can actually evaluate religions to determine if they indeed are true or not true. And so at Reasons to Believe, we spend a lot of time talking about philosophical and scientific arguments for God's existence. We spend time talking about the scientific evidence for the validity of the creation accounts, or the historical and archaeological evidence for the reliability of the Old and the New Testaments. And above all, there's a very powerful historical case that can be made for the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. So we would actually argue that we believe our faith is actually true. And because it's true, it can provide us with consolation. It provides a means by which we can actually experience God.
I think that is really an important point, because when we think about different worldviews, especially now, we see a lot of people who have this kind of a buffet of worldviews, and they put a little bit of this and that onto their plate. But that can't be tested. We can't necessarily test a worldview that is a little bit Eastern, New Age, Buddhist, a little bit Christian. We can't really test that. So I think that, yeah, absolutely. When we do talk about these challenges, and they're good challenges, I think those are important questions, that we do need to be equipped to know why we believe our faith is not only testable, but also based on sound reason. And I think that organizations like Reasons to Believe are vital for that, because it's more than just the feeling. It's actually exploring the truth of the claims that are being made. One of the other claims, and I do want to touch on this because I think that for many of us, it's very relatable. It's that religion is just a means to cope with death. And the reason why I'm asking that is because for so many of us, when we lose somebody, um, and if we believe that that is just the end of them, their existence is gone forever, that is hard to swallow. That is hard to kind of cope with. And a dear friend of mine lost her son. And to think, like, and that's like, I think one of the most difficult things to go through is to lose a child. So for her to think that her son is just over and done with, would be immensely painful. And for any of us, whether they're young or old, when we lose somebody, we don't want to believe that they're gone. But what does Christianity say about death that is different than just that they're kind of gone forever?
Yeah, and again, I would make a similar point that I made earlier, and that is that we can derive comfort from religious practices. The memorialization of the people that we love. Maybe a narrative where there's some kind of existence that they have beyond the here and now, and that can bring us comfort. But again, I derive comfort from Christianity and what it teaches about each of our destinies, uh, because I believe it's actually true. I mean, if it wasn't true, then it really offers no genuine comfort other than providing some kind of community support and giving some maybe limited perspective on that person's life, giving that person's life and memory value. But if Christianity is really true, then there's a real consolation. It's not a false consolation. And again, I think a lot of the comfort that I have seen people experience in the midst of death, that I too have experienced when loved ones have died, has come through a real encounter with God, a real experience of God that is the source ultimately of that comfort and that peace and that abiding hope.
Right. And we do know that from a Christian perspective, like, that death is not the end of the story. And Christ shows us that. I love, just the idea of now death wears your sting,
Mhm.
um, that it isn't over, that that is not the final word. So thank you so much for chiming in on this, heady topic, but an important one. So thank you so much for that, Fuzz. And if you would like to just learn more about your faith and the truth behind it, go to reasons.org and check out our countless articles and videos.